What's up, everyone? Welcome to Bilbrons and Dragons. I'm your host, Bilbron Bafflestone. So today we're having another episode of my Deep Dive series. Today looking at the 3 new feats from Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. I love me some good feats, and I was very impressed by the spells that were in Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, which I made a video about and will link to in the video description below. And I really like those. So I'm really excited to check out these feats. Now before I do want to mention, feats are a lot harder to come by than spells are, right? You only get a feat like every 4 levels or so, and feats compete with ASIs, which are absolutely critical to the development of most PCs. And then on top of that, there are already a strong handful of really good feats that are almost necessary for certain builds, right? Like marshals have got to be taken their Great Weapon Master and their Polearm Master and their Sentinel and their Crossbow Expert and their Sharpshooter and, all of that stuff. So feats have to, really clear a high bar if they're going to have a significant impact on the game. But power creep is a thing. This is the latest book. The spells that came in this book were really, really good. So I've got my hopes set up high for these feats. Hopefully there's going to be some good ones here that we'll want to take on our PCs. So without further ado, let's break it down. So as a reminder, I use a pretty simple rating system of superior, good, average, poor, and inferior, or 1 through 5 stars. And we are first going to look at Gift of the Chromatic Dragon. All of these feats are dragon flavored, of course. And Gift of the Chromatic Dragon confers a pseudo-divine favor once a day, and a pseudo-absorb elements a proficiency times per day. So right away, the fact that it's a pseudo-divine favor, which applies to weapons, makes it inappropriate for casters. Now, they can use it on an ally's weapon, but personally I think this is clunky and annoying, and it means you have to start next to each other, and I really still don't think it's all that appropriate for casters. I really wish that it worked more like Genie's Wrath, so that you could apply it to spells. And honestly, to me, like buffing your Firebolts and your Rays of Frost and such does seem to be within the role-playing parameters, but I guess they thought it would be too powerful if it could apply to non-weapons. Now, it is a bonus action to activate, and that is always nice. And it is no concentration, and that is also always nice. So that actually makes it better than Divine Favor, which is a concentration spell. However, the damage bump is unimpressive to me. I mean, it's nice that it will work with ranged weapons, but you really need a lot of attacks to make it add noticeable damage. If you have Action Surge to get more attacks, that would be even better. But to me, even with 3 attacks per round, you're only adding like 4.5 damage per round, assuming a 60% hit rate, and that's to a single target no less, and it doesn't confer magical status to the weapon, and it's only 1 time a day. So I am not all that impressed with the pseudo-divine favor aspect of Gift of the Chromatic Dragon so far, but it does come with a pseudo-absorb elements thing, and that's pretty solid. Especially because it includes poison damage, unlike actual absorb elements, which includes thunder damage. And poison damage is the most common damage type in 5th edition, after bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. So for it to replace thunder damage, which is the least common damage type in 5th edition, that's good. I like seeing poison on that. But be aware, it only works versus a single iteration of damage, unlike absorb elements, which last for a full round and can absorb multiple iterations. And there's no damage bump to an attack like you can get with absorb elements. So overall, I give Gift of the Chromatic Dragon a rating of poor, or 2 stars. The offensive aspect is unimpressive in my opinion, especially at only once a day. It's a little bit better than a first level spell. It's better than Divine Favor since you don't need to concentrate on it, but I wouldn't say it's as good as a 2nd level spell, and I don't like its lack of appeal to casters. The weapons only offensive aspect is a big turnoff to me. And the defensive aspect is somewhat appealing. It's not knocking my socks off, but it is intriguing. I think it's a tad weaker than Absorb Elements, which of course is a 1st level spell, but you do get multiple uses a day. I mean, I do like that it's a proficiency times per day. So overall, it seems like these abilities are about equal to Fey or Shadow Touched, except it's not a half feat, and those are. So I have to say this is ultimately not something that you're going to take if you are an optimizer and are concerned with optimizing your build. It's a role-playing choice. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I take role-playing choices all the time on my own characters. You don't need to turn in 100% of your possible power output. There's room for role-playing. So feel free to add it if you want to do it as a role-playing thing. I do think it is most appropriate for a fighter. They don't get absorb elements normally, and they do get a lot of feats, so they might be able to squeeze that on there. And maybe if you are playing in a specific campaign or at a table where you fight dragons all the time, I don't think there's anything published like that, but, maybe. If you are in that scenario, maybe it's a little bit better. But overall, I give it a rating of poor. Next, we have Gift of the Gem Dragon. And this is a half feat. Applies to intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, so that's great. And you get a retributive reaction of proficiency times per day. You can impose a strength save on an enemy that hits you. That'll do 2d8 force damage, save for half, and a 10-foot push if they fail to save. So okay, it's a mental half feat. That's good. That's appealing. There's not all that many mental half feats out there. And it is nice to offer a reaction. Some classes don't really get one. For example, I'm playing a Warlock right now, and it would be nice to add a good reaction. I do like that it triggers on attacks within 10 feet. Some enemies have reach, and you'd want to be able to do your retributive reaction against them. Though it is a strength save, and that's not ideal, especially at higher tiers. You're going to run into lots of stuff that's really strong. And it does poor damage, even negligible damage. Except at tier 1 maybe, but man, this thing doesn't scale very well at all. Now, even though save for half on the damage is always nice, especially if you're using it against a creature that's concentrating on something, and it is force damage, which is a very good damage type, but still, I really feel like this should scale or something with your proficiency bonus, just to keep it relevant in higher tiers. And the push can be okay. A lot of times it's not going to make any difference at all, though, because the enemy will often be able to just move back into position. You have to use the reaction on his turn, so he'll probably just move right back into position. Personally, I think this would be a lot better if it knocked them prone as well, and I'm not too impressed with it when it's just a 10-foot push. Now, it is decent that there's no size restriction on the push, so you can do even gargantuan enemies, and there is some synergy here with both Spirit Guardians and with difficult terrain, but honestly, I am just not really that impressed with this reaction. It seems more or less equivalent to a Hellish Rebuke to me, and I think that's a terrible spell. So I give Gift of the Gem Dragon a rating of poor plus, or 2.5 stars. To me, it just doesn't hold up relative to most other mental half feats that are available. Though it is at least a half feat, because the other two aren't half feats. But still, this is comparable but inferior to Fey and Shadow Touched, which to me are the mental half feat gold standards. Those offer you powerful first and second level spell options that you can cast out of your regular slots, and this gives you a poor reaction. It's also somewhat comparable but inferior to Telekinetic. It comes with way more restrictions on the conditions in which you can use it. It's not unlimited use like Telekinetic, and Telekinetic also comes with an invisible mage hand. As much as I like the ability to add a reaction, this reaction is just not too impressive to me. It's just a little extra offense. I would seriously prefer something more defensive in that scenario. I only think it's decent if the enemy is concentrating on something. The push can be okay if you set it up with certain combos, but again, ultimately, this is a role-playing choice. It's not an optimization choice. The final feat that we get is Gift of the Metallic Dragon, which offers Cure Wounds once per day and puts it on your spell list, and a pseudo shield/defensive duelist option, a proficiency times per day. So Cure Wounds is an okay add for classes that don't normally get it, but I don't find it compelling because I'm not sure that it makes much sense if you look at the team aspect of D&D. Because surely you have a healer in the party, right? I don't think this makes sense to add to a healer, and I don't think it makes much difference adding it to not a healer, so okay, not horrible, but okay. I will say it's nice to be able to attach it to your intelligence or your charisma if you're of the appropriate classes, but man, it's just a first level spell, just like you get with Fey Touched and Shadow Touched, but it's not a half feat. So I'm not liking this so far. And then the targeted bump to AC, it can be solid when you need it. I mean, we can all think of instances in which it would be nice to have something like that. It is nice that you can protect either yourself or someone else that is within 5 feet of you. but it is only effective versus a single attack, unlike Shield, which lasts for the whole round, which means that it scales badly as higher tier monsters come with multi-attack. And so even though the power of this ability is directly tied to the proficiency bonus, I don't think it scales very well. On top of that, it's limited uses per day, unlike Defensive Duelist, which you can use all day long. Now, it's better than Defensive Duelist in that you don't have to have a finesse weapon, but still, I think Defensive Duelist is better than this, and Defensive Duelist isn't even a good feat. Not to mention that Gift of the Metallic Dragon requires sight. Shield and Defensive Duelist don't require sight, so yeah, that really sucks. Gotta say, not too impressed. I give Gift of the Metallic Dragon a rating of poor, or 2 stars. Again, the powers just seem more appropriate if it was attached to a half feat. That would make them comparable to Fey and Shadow Touched, and maybe not even better. As it is, they are currently comparable more to like Magic or Artificer Initiate, and those are very underpowered feats these days. So, like the first two, I think it's more of a role-playing option, but even here, the role-playing synergy is very confusing to me. I don't understand why metallic dragons would get Cure Wounds. So yeah, this one is definitely not for optimizers. It's weird for role-playing. I give it a rating of poor. So that's it! My assessment of the 3 draconic feats available in Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. I'm very disappointed. I don't expect to see these feats on hardly any characters. I don't plan on using them in any of my own builds. They're just not that good. Again, in the context of feats being very hard to come by, competing with ASIs, and competing with a whole bunch of currently existing feats that are way better. I mean, I understand not necessarily wanting to continue power creep, but it's better than giving us stuff that nobody wants to use, right? But we got another book coming out here soon, so we'll go over all of those spells and feats. Maybe the feats will be better. I've already seen the just everybody going crazy about Silvery Barbs, so that'll be interesting. I'll definitely do a video about that. But in any case, let me know what you think about these feats in the comments below. Let me know if anybody else thinks that they're any good. And regardless, thank you so much for watching. This has been Bill Bronze and Dragons. I'm your host, Bill Bron Bafflestone. See you next time.